Hearing her husband Furkan's words, I was left stunned and kept staring at him for a long while. When Furkan noticed the changing expressions on my face, he quickly grabbed my hand and laid me down on the bed beside him. He said, "Samim, what exactly did I say that made you react so badly? I only want us to spend these Eid holidays together." Before Furkan could say anything further, I placed my hand over his mouth and said, "You know very well we had agreed that I would never go to your village with you. I married you on the condition that we would live our entire life in the city. If you want to go to your village, then go, but I will never go with you." Suddenly, Furkan pressed his lips against mine, cutting me off mid-sentence. I struggled helplessly, but Furkan's grip was very strong. He held my hands firmly with both his hands, and with his lips, he drank the thirst he had for me. This had always been his way. Whenever I disagreed with him, he would show intense love and convince me. But this time, I was not willing to give in. He kissed my lips for a long time, showering loving kisses on my neck. When his frenzy finally subsided a little, I got up from the bed, gave him a sharp look and said, "These tricks won't work this time. I won't agree to go because I have already made it clear. I will not go to that ignorant village." Hearing this, Furkan's face changed color. Perhaps my words upset him. But he didn't say a single word. Instead, he stood up, wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, slowly unzipped my dress, and began kissing my back softly. I knew he was doing all this to convince me, but despite myself, I slowly started giving in to him. His love was such that he always got his way. I surrendered myself to him, and then he poured all his passion on me through the night. The next morning, as he got up from the bed, he said only one thing: "Pack our things by evening. We will celebrate this Eid in the village." As he said this, Furkan kissed my cheeks and started getting ready to leave for the office. I just took a deep breath. After receiving his love all night, it was impossible for me to refuse him now. As soon as Furkan left for work, I called my sister and told her that Furkan wanted to take me with him to his village. Hearing this, she became upset and said, "Why did you agree? Your entire Eid will be ruined. Not only are the customs in the village different, but the people there are so old-fashioned. When you got married, you told Furkan you wouldn't go to his village. So why did you agree now?" What could I tell my sister about how Furkan had convinced me with his love? I just informed her that I would be leaving in the evening and would spend the entire Eid holidays there. There were still 2 days left before Eid, and we had a whole week to spend in the village. Accordingly, I packed my bags, but the truth was my heart was still pounding badly. I had always heard strange and unsettling things about the village. I was a girl born and raised in the city, and my whole life had been spent there. Not only was I educated, but I was also a working woman, and it was at my workplace that Furkan and I first met. He had come from the village for a job. He was a well-educated, sensible man, and slowly our friendship grew, which eventually turned into love. I decided to marry him, but on one clear condition: that I would never go to his village. I had made it very clear to him that the villagers were very ignorant, and I did not want to ruin my life by going there. Then one day, we received news that Furkan's mother was seriously ill. Even then, I firmly refused to go. He was silent after that. He thought he would go alone, but before that, we heard the news of Furkan's mother's death. Furkan was devastated by the sudden shock. He immediately talked about going to the village, so I just packed his bags for him. At that moment, he was overwhelmed with grief. He couldn't show me love to console me, nor could he argue with me. He just gave me a cold look and left for the village while I stayed behind in the city. After spending 15 days in the village, he returned very quiet and lost in thought, always remembering his mother. After some days, I was able to comfort him with my love, though he often still missed his mother. It had been only 6 months since the passing of Furkan's mother when the two Eids approached, the small Eid, Eid al-Fitr, and the big Eid, Eid al-Adha. During the small Eid, I had managed to convince him not to take me to the village, but when the big Eid came, his father insisted that we celebrate the festival and perform the sacrifice in the village with the family. This time, Furkan persuaded me with such love and devotion that I completely gave in. After all, until then, I had refused every time. I was also scared that if I refused again, Furkan might become upset with me, and I did not want to damage our relationship. To save our marriage, I reluctantly agreed to go with him. We boarded the train heading towards the village deep in the heart of Sindh. My heart was gripped with fear the entire journey, and I remained silent the whole time. Furkan kept asking me what was wrong and why I was so quiet, but I didn't respond at first. As the village came closer, I finally gathered the courage to tell him, "Are there strange or backward customs in the village? I'm very scared of the villagers. I've heard they are very ignorant people and don't even know how to live properly." Furkan simply looked at me and said calmly, "The village customs are different from the city, but they are not dangerous. Don't worry." Then, taking my hand firmly in his, I stepped into the village with him. Furkan's father owned a large mansion in the village. He was a landowner, a zamindar. Despite his prestigious roots, Furkan had always been passionate about city life and a professional career, so he had left behind the family land and property to settle in the city for work. As I looked around, I was stunned to see that his father's influence ruled over the entire village. From the moment we entered the village, everyone greeted us with great respect. The villagers treated Furkan's family like royalty. I noticed the difference immediately. The entire village revolved around Furkan's father's authority, and the respect shown to us was unlike anything I had ever experienced in the city. The grand mansion was surrounded by sprawling fields, with tall trees shading the pathways. Women in colorful traditional dresses moved gracefully in the courtyard, and children played freely near the village well. The air was filled with the aroma of fresh earth and crops, a stark contrast to the concrete and noise of the city I was used to. Despite my fears, I was welcomed warmly. The villagers' respect for Furkan and his family was evident in their polite greetings and gestures. Furkan's relatives, uncles, and cousins came forward to shake my hand and smile kindly, making me feel a little less anxious. That evening, as the sun dipped low, the preparations for Eid began. I observed the rituals carefully, the prayers at the village mosque, the communal meals, and the preparations for the sacrificial animal. Though different from the city, these traditions had a deep meaning and were rooted in faith and community spirit. However, beneath the warmth, I couldn't shake my unease. The villagers' way of life was unfamiliar and seemed so distant from the modern lifestyle I was accustomed to. The rules, the customs, even the way women were expected to behave made me silently nervous. Yet seeing Furkan happy and at peace here, I reminded myself that this was his home, a place that shaped him into the man I loved. That night, I lay awake wondering how I would manage the days ahead. The language, the customs, the expectations, everything was new and challenging. But I was determined to try to honor Furkan's family and maintain the harmony in our marriage. In the days that followed, I slowly began to understand the rhythms of village life. I learned to respect their customs, attended the gatherings with modesty, and even started to appreciate the simple beauty of a life so connected to nature and tradition. The villagers, too, gradually accepted me. They saw my efforts and respected my position as Furkan's wife. Their initial curious glances softened into warm smiles, and soon I was included in the conversations and festivities. Though my heart still longed for the city's comforts, I realized that sometimes love requires sacrifice and adaptation. Furkan's world was not mine by birth, but it was now mine to embrace as well. After dinner, my husband's father sent my husband and the steward outside on some errand. Then he turned to me and said, "Come, daughter-in-law, I will take you behind the mansion to see your animal." I couldn't refuse him even if I wanted to, because in front of his authority and dominance, I was completely silent. Struggling to control my emotions, I followed him to the place where my camel was kept. It was a large room where the camel and its feed were kept. My father-in-law said, "Come, feed your camel with your own hands." Somehow I managed to feed the camel some fodder but was scared and quickly stepped back. After some time, my father-in-law showed me all the animals and then took me back. Now only one day remained before Eid al-Adha, and I was eagerly waiting for the Eid to be over. When I returned to the mansion with my father-in-law and entered the room, I immediately had an argument with Furkan. He was comfortably sitting on the bed, checking his mobile phone. Angrily, I said, "The customs here are so strange and backward. Your father forcefully took me to see the camel, and on top of that, made me feed it with my own hands. I don't understand what satisfaction you get from these weird rituals. When there are so many servants available to do these tasks, why was I supposed to feed the camel?" And everyone started calling us owners and mistresses, bowing down at our feet. Only then did I realize the status my husband held in this village. We crossed the entire village and finally reached the mansion, which looked impressive at first glance. My in-laws welcomed me warmly, especially my father-in-law, who was very pleased to see me. Then the women there showed me my room. It was a very large and magnificent room, so well equipped that it hardly felt like I was in a village. Almost every kind of facility was available. Later, when we gathered for dinner, my father-in-law told me that he had even bought a camel in my name, and the sacrificial animals for the rest of the family members were also prepared. He wanted me to come with him after dinner to see my sacrificial animal. Upon arriving here, my demeanor had somewhat changed, and this change was at my husband's urging. I had completely covered my head with a dupatta. I had already left my sleeveless clothes back in the city, and now I sat with my head bowed respectfully because this was the custom here. I was very afraid of animals, so when my father-in-law mentioned showing me the animals, I immediately looked at my husband. But he was busy eating and did not even glance at me, even though he knew very well that whether it was a cow or a camel, I never went near them. Whatever came to my mouth, I kept saying it angrily, and when I finally fell silent, Farkan got up and said, "Why do you make such a fuss over every little thing? You have a camel in your name. So what if you fed it once?" Saying this, he left the room. Farkan had never behaved like this with me before, so I was shocked to see this change, and I felt sorry for myself for coming to the village. My own husband had changed after coming here. I sat angrily on the bed, and after a while, I completely messed up the whole room. Whenever I got angry, I used to break things, and here too, I did the same. But I had no idea what was going to happen to me the next night. Otherwise, I might have run away from the village and returned to the city that very night. I was alone in the room until midnight, and after midnight, when my husband returned, he went straight to sleep without talking to me. Instead of apologizing to me on behalf of his father, he turned his face away from me. I was also very angry, so I went to sleep shortly after. When I woke up in the morning, I had decided that I would not leave my room anymore. This was my way of protesting. I wanted to go back to the city, and I was ready to do whatever it took for that. I called my sister and told her that I was not happy at all there. She said, "You don't need to talk much to anyone. Seeing your attitude, Farkan himself will take you back to the city." I understood what my sister meant. I stayed alone in the room all day, but surprisingly, no one came to see me, nor did anyone send food for me. Only once at mealtime, a servant girl came and told me to come to the dining table. When I refused, no one asked me anything after that. Even Farkan didn't check on me. I don't know where he was all day. Tears started coming to my eyes. I had trusted Farrakhan and made a mistake because he had completely changed after coming here. Then, late at night, suddenly my father-in-law came into the room. Seeing him, I stood up politely because I had no courage to say anything in front of him. He said, "Come, daughter-in-law. Today is the last day. Tomorrow is Eid. The sacrificial camel is in your name, so you have to take care of it." I didn't understand what he meant, but I followed him. Then he took me to another room. It was a very small room, barely enough space, and on one side, my camel was tied. The room was so cramped that after I entered, my father-in-law had to stay at the door, and the camel was right near my face. I stood there gasping for breath when suddenly, my father-in-law said something that shocked me. He said, "Tonight, you have to sleep with this camel, and this is our tradition here. The woman in whose name the sacrifice is made, she spends the night with her animal and pleases it." Hearing this, I was completely stunned. I said to him, "How is this possible? I am very afraid of camels. Besides, this camel isn't even tied and the room is so small." He smiled and said, "This is a domesticated camel. It won't harm you. You just have to spend the whole night with it and make it happy by morning." Before I could refuse and leave the room, he suddenly went outside and locked the door from outside. This act of his terrified me. I started banging on the door desperately, but the place was so far from the mansion that no one could hear my screams. Now I felt like my life was slipping away, because in that room it was just me and my camel. Everyone else was elsewhere. There wasn't enough space in the room for me to move away from the camel. I was very close to its legs, and it was sitting on the ground. There wasn't even enough space for me to sit properly. I started banging on the door again, but still no one came. And I realized that whether I wanted to or not, I had to spend the entire night there. I felt like my life was slipping away. I somehow managed to sit in the little space near the camel's legs, and out of fear, I slowly ran my hand over its back, hoping it wouldn't get upset or try to stand up. At that moment, I felt sorry that when I first set foot in this village, when I married Farkan, I should have told him clearly that I disliked the villagers so much and that I never wanted to come to the village. I had always spoken negatively about the village, and now being here, it felt like my thoughts were completely right. Because what my father in law had done to me was completely inhumane. How could he imprison me with an animal in such a small space? I slowly stroked the camel and kept putting feet in front of it so that it wouldn't accidentally try to stand up or harm me. I had to spend this night, and tears welled up in my eyes uncontrollably, but I covered my voice with my hands because I had heard that camels get startled if they hear crying sounds. I struggled hard to control myself. I recited every prayer I knew, one after another. Slowly, the night passed by like this. Not even for a moment could I sleep. I was in a terrible state from lack of sleep, but the fear of the camel was weighing heavily on me. As midnight passed, my fear of the camel lessened a little. Then I relaxed myself a bit because in all those hours, it hadn't done anything bad to me. It was quietly sitting there with its eyes closed. Maybe it was also sleeping. I slowly stroked its back and rested my head against its back, closing my eyes. And indeed, after a short while, I fell asleep. About an hour later, my eyes opened at the call for Fajr prayer, and this long night came to an end. About an hour after that, the door to the room opened, and I saw my father-in-law's face. He said, "Come on, daughter-in-law. You have spent the night very well. I'm sure you have taken good care of your sacrificial animal. Now go inside and rest because the time for the sacrifice has come." I ran, stumbled, and hurried to my room. While my husband was standing in front of the mirror getting ready, I grabbed Furkan by his collar in anger and said, "What kind of nonsense is this? What did your father do to me?" He smiled and said, "The sacrificial animal is yours. If you took care of it for one night, what's the big deal?" I said angrily, "You know very well that I'm scared of animals and your father locked me in that small room with the camel. Do you even know how I spent the whole night? I felt suffocated all night." My husband Furkan looked at my face and said, "Yes, I know. You spent the night exactly the way I spend every night." I was stunned at what he meant by that, but without replying to me, he left the room for the sacrifice. One by one, all the animals were sacrificed. I stayed locked in the room the whole time until I packed my things. Then in the evening, when Furkan came back exhausted, I angrily asked, "What did you mean by what you said this morning?" Seeing my packed belongings, he sat beside me, took a deep breath, and said, "You always call us villagers ignorant and criticize our customs and traditions, yet we have never harmed you. That's why I too suffer a lot every night with you. We villagers are very honorable and proud. No one can insult the soil of our village or us without us getting upset. But for your love, I have been hearing bad things about my village for a long time. When my mother died, you refused to come here because you spoke badly of the villagers. Even then, I kept my patience. But when you insulted my father here and destroyed all the room's belongings, my father realized you were unhappy. When he asked me about it, I told him frankly how you think about us." My father smiled upon hearing this and said, "Even if we give Shamim too much love, even then she will doubt us and will never be certain that we are not ignorant, but people with proper manners and customs. That is why Shamim needs to be handled differently. Father asked my permission to leave your matter to them, and I agreed and remained completely silent. Last night, Father deliberately took you to the camel because it was the sacrificial camel in your name. That's why Father wanted you to take care of it, stay with it, and learn many things. That's why Father locked you in with the camel. You saw that the camel did not harm you the entire night. You stayed close to it, and yet it did not move from its place. You slowly began to care for it, and by morning, you had given it plenty of fodder and water. Before entering this room, you thought the camel would take your life because it's an animal and might harm you. But didn't you realize last night that when you spent time with love, the camel became yours? Think about how a creature became yours through your love. Can't you similarly win people over with your love? What is wrong with this village or its people? Have you ever visited here before? Have you ever seen the whole village? Do you know there are high schools for girls here? Girls not only get education here, but also go to the city to study further. 4 girls from our village have become doctors, and 2 girls have recently enrolled in engineering. My father wholeheartedly supports them all. My father has given rights to women in this village. The soil of our village is like gold, but you have always insulted this soil and its people. It hurt my heart deeply whenever you spoke ill of my village. I barely managed to spend nights with you whenever you spoke badly about my village. And now, perhaps, you have also realized what it feels like to spend a night in a suffocating environment. Farkan smiled and said, "Last night, you did not just take care of your sacrificial animal, but you also sacrificed your fear. The fear you had of animals. Now I want you to also sacrifice the fear you have of the village and its customs. There is no oppressor in this village. No one will harm you here, nor will the customs of the village harm you. Here, women spend the night with their sacrificial animals because they themselves care for their animals, love them immensely, and then sacrifice them in the way of Allah. Women here don't hand over their animals to others like city women. Rather, they love them deeply and take care of them themselves so that they can receive the proper reward and blessings of sacrifice. This is exactly what Baba John made you do, though his way was different. He wanted your ego, stubbornness, and anger to be sacrificed. And on this Eid, you should purify yourself from all these things. Eid ul-Adha is not just about sacrificing an animal, but also about sacrificing our ego, stubbornness, and anger. When we buy an animal of our choice, love it, take care of it, and then sacrifice it in the way of Allah, our selfishness and ego are sacrificed along with it. Hearing Farkan's words, my head bowed down with shame. Truly, from the very beginning, I had considered the villagers ignorant, and I used to openly call them fools in front of Farkan. I never thought that he himself was a villager, and that my words would hurt him. Farkan said Eid Mubarak and hugged me tightly. Tears started falling from my eyes. Then he took my hand and brought me to his father. His father placed his hand on my head and prayed deeply for me. After that, Farkan showed me the whole village, and I was amazed to see that the village had become very modern. The idea of the village in my mind was nothing like this. The people there were well educated and all of them respected us greatly. I spent a whole week in the village and realized how wrong my thoughts had been. I returned to the city carrying a lot of love in my heart, and my heart was cleansed of all the hatred that I had nurtured while living in the city. Now I am willing to spend every Eid in the village because the love there is so sincere and pure. I want to tell all of you not to form opinions about someone without truly knowing them. We city people have become very selfish and arrogant. We consider people living in villages or remote areas inferior and insignificant, yet we do not even know them. Who knows, those people may be even more truthful and kind than us. Never form an opinion about a place or people without understanding them. I will remember the sacrifice of the camel for my entire life because that night I took care of the camel myself. For the first time in my life, I cared for my sacrificial animal myself, and on this Eid, I understood the true spirit of sacrifice.